Hey, Croix friends, this is Pastor Ron coming to you again, this time from my living room. Well, I have to say that this was an Easter and Lenten season like no other. Who would have guessed just a few short weeks ago that church buildings around the world would be empty on Easter Sunday? I still can't get over how quickly our world has changed. Speaking of empty, can I be brutally honest with you? A little transparency moment here. On Sunday afternoon, after the high of our online worship experiences that morning, I slipped into the darkest valley emotionally that I've been in since this pandemic began. It was the first time in 22 years that our house wasn't filled with family from out of town. Normally, we go to St. Louis to be with extended family on holidays, but on Easter, they come to Cape Girardeau. Not this year. This year was just me and Linda and our dog. On top of that, I got sick on Friday, tested for COVID-19 on Saturday, was wearing a mask, not feeling well, and I was just really sad. On top of that, the reality just sort of began to sink in that this isn't going to go away anytime soon. Well, thankfully, the sun came out on Monday and the test came back negative on Tuesday. Look, the suffering that I've experienced is minor compared to the suffering of many, especially those who've lost loved ones or jobs or have become sick themselves. I only share this with you because I suspect some of you have entered that dark valley at times during this crisis as well. And I just want you to know it's okay to admit it, and that our faith has a lot of room for sorrow and lament. Historically, many have recognized the season of Lent by giving up something. I normally give up sweets because I really like my desserts. But let's be honest. Have we ever been asked to give up so much during a Lenten season? I made a list of some of the things I've given up. Things like public worship, seeing all of you in person, seeing my grandkids. It's been 7 weeks since I've held any of my grandkids. Going to the gym, working with my staff at the church, Major League Baseball. Need I say more? I heard one person joke, this was the lentiest Lent I've ever lented. Look, many of our problems are first world problems and others are suffering worse, much worse. But I learned a long time ago not to compare one person's suffering with another. If we hurt, we hurt. So here's what I'd recommend you do. As soon as this video is over, take a few moments and make your own list. List all the things that you've given up or lost because of this pandemic. They can be small things or big things. It's your list and no one else really needs to see it. Next, I would encourage you to take that list to God and simply acknowledge your grief. Some of you live by yourselves and you're desperately lonely and the social distancing is draining the life out of you. If so, acknowledge it and be okay with just sitting in it for a while. Do you know that 1/3 of the Psalms, the longest book in all of the Bible, are laments? So acknowledging your sadness is in line with our scriptures. Bible scholar and author N.T. Wright wrote a piece for Time magazine a couple weeks ago. And this is what he said. He said, the point of lament, woven into the fabric of the biblical tradition, is not just that it's our outlet for frustration, sorrow, loneliness, and sheer inability to understand what is happening or why. The mystery of the biblical story is that God also laments. Some Christians like to think of God as above all that, knowing everything, in charge of everything, calm and unaffected by the troubles of the world, but that's not the picture we get in the Bible, he says. Goes on to write, God was grieved to his heart, Genesis declares, over the violent wickedness of his human creatures. He was devastated when his own bride, the people of Israel, turned away from him. And when God came back to his people in person, he wept at the tomb of his friend. St. Paul speaks of the Holy Spirit groaning within us as we ourselves groan within the pain of the whole creation. The ancient doctrine of the Trinity teaches us to recognize the one God in the tears of Jesus and the anguish of the Spirit. It's a great article. Well, Easter tells us that the story does not end in darkness, But friends, the story goes through the darkness. And that's where many of us are. Don't deny it or ignore it. Simply name it before God. In a couple weeks, I'm going to have you make an entirely different list, something much more hopeful and positive. But I really believe it's important and brings healing to our souls when we lament, when we acknowledge the pain inside. This allows the God who loves us and knows us to enter that pain and heal it. This weekend at LaCroix, we start a whole new series on the Psalms, and I'm looking forward to it because for me, the Psalms have been a lifeline. This ancient song and prayer book of Israel have been a lifeline for me in hard, difficult times, and I believe it will be for you as well. Until then, may you find that the one who is called the man of sorrows is there with you and knows what you're going through because he himself has gone through it. May his grace and peace be with you in this season.